Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Reload Podcast, along with Nathan Gilsleider and Marshall Scott. I'm Justin Southwell. And guys, we have Baylor coming up. I don't think there's anything else going on outside of that, so let's dive right into the Baylor preview. Just kidding. In his 21st season, Coach Gundy has been fired. He had accumulated a 170-90 record with the Cowboys, and his 170 career coaching victories are 108 more than any other coach in school history. The bummer is that he's only tallied one win in the past 373 days, so he will end his Oklahoma State coaching career at a 170-90 record rather than what was looking like 170-99. Everyone wanted to see Coach Gundy ride off into the sunset. Problem was, it looked as though he was about to ride off a cliff. So he got fired on a Tuesday. To start off, before we dive into anything else, I kind of want to touch on, where were you guys when you heard the news? What happened? What was your reaction?
I work, and I'm around I'm not a doctor, but I'm around a lot of doctors. So I was actually in the middle of a lunch, and I was talking to some doctors, and I saw you. We were started texting, and you were like, "Hey, maybe we should do like an emergency pod." And I was like, somebody get in trouble? Like, what's going on here? And then I looked down, and my wife's calling, and she normally doesn't call. We text quite a bit throughout the day, but I'm like, literally the first thing that went through my head was like, did my kid fall? Did somebody get in trouble? Are they sick? Something going on? So I'm like, hey, excuse me for a second. I need to step out and take this call. And take the call, and she wants to talk about Coach Gundy getting fired. And I was like, holy smokes, like, this is real. And, obviously very distracted ever since, and was pulling on Twitter and, 1,000 text messages and whatnot. But, yeah, so I was working, and honestly just hit like a ton of bricks because, we talked about it quite a bit. And the reality of it happening, I think, the Tulsa game sealed the fate, and we were correct in that assessment. But it's really somber when it actually happens, and especially in the way that it did. So yeah, hit me pretty hard.
Yeah, my day actually started at a coffee shop. The electric company was doing something at our house today. So they're like, hey, the electricity is going to be off from 9 to 2. So I go to Aspen here in Stillwater. They texted at like 10:30 that said it was back on. So then I come back home. I have to take my wife to lunch because she eats like a 5-year-old. So she'd finally built up the courage to go eat at Red Rock. So we were going to go eat at Red Rock today. And then all that stuff starts breaking at like 11 something. So I texted her and I was like, hey, it's not happening today. So maybe we'll get Red Rock tomorrow, or maybe she'll go back into her chicken nuggets only kind of thing. But that's where I was. And then I've been in GIA and staring at my laptop the rest of the day.
Shout out to Red Rock. Shout out to Aspen Coffee. Two of the top premier places there in Stillwater. My wife loves them, so we gotta.
The fresh bread. Let's not get off topic here, but the fresh bread at Red Rock with a nice sandwich, like, it's elite. But sorry, we can get back to what the most important thing.
It is good. Well, I was also at work, maybe around. It was mid-morning whenever I was talking to one of the security guards at my work, Scott. He's an Oklahoma State fan, so we had been talking about everything that's been going on with the program, giving my thoughts. He listens to the podcast. And so he came up to me and was like, hey, what do you think is going to happen? Is Gundy going to get fired? And my honest reaction was, it's probably just a matter of time. I don't think it'll happen mid-season. I hope that it can play out until the end of the year. I went back up, sit at my desk, working for a few more minutes. And then I get a call from Scott on my phone, and Scott doesn't ever call me during the workday. So I'm like, this is a big deal. Something's happening. The security threat in the building. I don't know what's happening. But no, he called and was like, hey, it's official. They fired Gundy. He's been let go. I was like, hold on. So pull up Twitter, verified it. Of course, Pistol's firing. Tweeted out about 2 minutes ago that Coach Gundy had been officially fired. So yeah, it was a wild ride. Ever since then, just a whirlwind of emotions. More sad than anything on my end because I didn't want it to happen that way. But I kind of want to dive into the timing. A lot of people were wondering, why make the move the next day after his press conference? Like, was it something in particular that Gundy said at the mic, or is this more about the overall chaos going on inside the Oklahoma State athletic department? Or maybe a better way to phrase it, if you think that everything's fine in the athletic department, Was this firing today a way to make a statement that they're serious about the future of the program and that they're not settling for what we've seen any longer?
I'll get started. And I just think a Tuesday is a little odd. Talking to Chad Weiberg today, he was like, well, when is a good time? And I agree with that to a certain extent. But, to think that
at the end of the season, I think is probably like what everybody would kind of default to.
Yeah.
Like just wait until the end of the year. We know it's going to play out that way, but it is, I do agree to an extent. There's not really a good time, but Tuesday after his presser, the Monday before, just really odd.
I think if you wait, if you don't even like tell him until the end of the season, then I think you're putting yourself behind a little bit more behind than you maybe necessarily need to be. I wish that this turned into a retirement tour. I wish that that's the way it went. I understand even from Gundy's perspective why, if you're telling me that I'm fired, like I don't necessarily want to keep doing this. Like I get that to a certain extent, if that's what, if that's how it went, or if that's, was the option there. But yeah, I do think a Tuesday was a little odd considering, he had his coach's show last night. He had his press conference yesterday. They played on a Friday, so they had Saturday, they had Sunday. I thought, they played Baylor. It's not like they're on a bye week. They played Baylor on a couple of days. So I thought a Tuesday was a little odd, but I also, to some extent, understand what Weiberg is saying in that, like, there's not necessarily a great time to rip this Band-Aid off. So yeah, I don't know. That's where I stand on it. I don't like the timing, but I'm not sure when I would have, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm going to take some of the things that were said today with a bit of a grain of salt. Chad Weiberg has a broader view, and he's also, for the better part of a year now, he has tried to take a lot of the arrows for Coach Gundy, as a good boss AD should, right? Because of what happened this past offseason, it's been well documented about what was going on with the Board of Regents and how messy that got and how real that got, and getting lawyers involved and yada yada yada, right? And for all intensive purposes, Chad Weiberg and our former president were like, hey, that's not fair. You need to give him one more year, right? And so I think the Regents had already made up their mind at that point. It was pretty apparent that they were done. The damage to the donors and fans and things like that, they were over it. And honestly, his inability and lack of want to change, set us back, quite frankly. I mean, if we're just being honest, we're probably 3 years behind on roster, and we can see that. We saw little by little we had our starters picked off and left, and this is where we are today. The Tuesday problem, to me, really speaks to, I think, if I were guessing, regardless of what's said, that Coach Gundy was at least given the opportunity to say, hey, we've made up our mind. We'd love for you to stay on. We're going to start this process so we don't get behind the 8 ball, when and how you want to do this, yada, 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 right? 2 things stuck out to me about Coach Gundy's press conference yesterday. Number 1, his on-point joke of going up there and being like, it's pretty hot in here, isn't it? Like, a little odd. Whether it's warm or not, Marshall, I can't concur, but
I will confirm it is warm in there, because so this is another off topic. During games, it's connected to the same AC unit that is connected throughout the suites. The issue is those suites can open
are all blasting.
Yeah. So it's as cold as can be, but we can't open our windows, so it just gets freezing in there. But then they turn that off the rest of the week, and it does get pretty hot in there, I will say.
Okay, all right. Well, he's pretty good at these little subtle things that he's done throughout his years.
If he did that purposefully, holy crap, what a guy.
Well, so first of all, I was like, that's a little odd, and then secondly, you guys did a great job the last 2 press conferences of asking him very pointed questions. And to his credit, he didn't really dodge, he actually stood up there and answered them, but he was oddly specific about how much time he had left on his contract. He was like 3.4, right, whatever, right? I mean, usually you're just like, hey man, I've got 3 years left on this thing or whatever. Like, he was oddly specific. And I was like, man, we've been checking the pages lately or what's going on. So I wasn't really surprised from that standpoint, because I mean, we'd all talked about it, but then those 2 things, for whatever reason, just kind of piqued my interest. And I think he'd reached a level of disdain and disconnect that essentially he just said, if you're going to do it, do it. I'm not going to be dead man walking.
Yep.
I'm over it. And I don't blame him for that. We're going to lose commitments either way, guys. Like, that's just the process. I mean, they committed to a coach in a place that they thought was stability and the winningest coach and legacy, yada, yada, yada. Right? It wouldn't have mattered if you did it in November. Now, you might have had a shorter time frame. So, like, that new coach can be coming within, like, hey, give us 4 weeks. We're going to have a new coach. Then make a decision, right? That's an easier conversation to have. But either way, these guys, and quite frankly, if they're decommitting this fast, well, guys, if they just watch the Oregon and Tulsa games, they're probably were going to decommit. I mean, let's just be fair. So on a Tuesday is odd, to say the least. But I think if you track back far enough, I think there's a lot of dots connected by it being on a Tuesday. It's kind of what I'm trying to say.
I agree. I think it had a lot to do with what he said about the time left on his contract. Coach Gundy's gotten very good over the years at coach speak during his interviews. And it makes you wonder, like, what if you just said he was focused on Baylor this week, 1 week at a time? I think that was probably the thing that pushed it over the edge. They're looking for a reason. And to your point, I'm not going to be dead man walking. So he's daring them to do it. And then they did it. I mean, that's kind of the way that I feel like it played out. To your point about the recruits and stuff like that. Yeah, it's going to be, you would hope that some of that stuff, if you were going to fire him at the end of the year or let him walk at the end of the year, whatever the case is, probably sounds like it would have to come down to firing. But you do all that stuff, I think, in the background, behind the scenes. You're finding out who your next coach is during that process and letting them know, Gundy's gone at the end of the year. We want you to come in and be the guy. Start talking to these recruits, all this other stuff, so that we can make sure that this succession plan plays out as smoothly, as seamlessly as possible. Do you feel that way? Or
yes, I do. I think there's no right time, right? Like we talked about, and he's completely right. But I also think he's kind of giving you a little bit of the okie doke. He knows it's not great on a Tuesday. Like, he's not silly.
It sounded a little bit like, in Chad's words in his press conference, that he wasn't necessarily planning to do it today. Did you guys kind of feel that way or no?
He said that a couple times, but I think he just meant like throughout his time. I don't think that he expected him to be standing up at a podium.
If we had beat Tulsa, it didn't happen today. But I think the Board of Regents basically was like, pulled the plug. That's enough.
Yeah.
I think that's what he was getting at.
Man, that sucks. Yeah. Any other takeaways from Weiberg's press conference that you guys wanted to harp on?
I've got a couple of things. Like, I wrote a thing on the site. Go read it. So there's no buyout reduction per Chad. Didn't sound like that was something they were after. He said, they're going to honor those contractual obligations. That's always been something that sort of, whenever we're discussing what the end of this looks like, is Oklahoma State going to have to pay that full 15? It seems as if that is the case. But similarly, Chad didn't seem that stressed about funding, just in general. He said he wasn't looking for donor support for the buyout, but then he gave a lot of quotes that,
I took that as a very diplomatic thing to say also. I don't know that that's, I'll just say it it was a diplomatic response in his position.
I don't know where that sort of money comes from. I've never, if I knew where $15 million come from, I wouldn't be talking to you guys right now. I don't think so.
I'm hurt.
Yeah. But yeah, so Chad just, he said a couple of times that they're not lacking support. He mentioned the 123 suites, how they're full. He likes the investment they have there. So I think if you're an Oklahoma State fan and you're sort of worried, okay, I get that, Gundy wasn't playing these NIL games, but like, is OSU capable of playing those NIL games? It at least seems like the athletic director is confident in that. So I think that's an overall positive. Weiberg said he was still without a contract. I think that might have been schematics a little bit. I don't think they have him fire Mike Gundy if they also weren't going to retain him. That just seemed like that'd be crazy if he was the one that had to go tell Mike Gundy he's fired, and they're like, all right, shit, that'll be it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. He's got an extension. Let's just be real.
Yeah. So I think that's there.
That's probably the right thing to say in that situation. Don't make it about him.
That's what he said, right? That's
sure.
All right, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
There's a few things. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say the last thing I've got is that sort of how OSU football will operate for the rest of the season. Doug Meacham's the interim OC. Rob Glass is handling the way that Chad described it is anything between the lines is Doug Meacham. Anything outside of the lines is Rob Glass. You guys know both of those guys better, so I'll let you react to that. But that's all I got in terms of takeaways.
Yeah, for me, there's a few things that stuck out about it. The main takeaway I took from it is he was adamant that we are well sourced, and that the talks of our demise are greatly exaggerated from that standpoint.
Love it.
I mean, that's just the feel I got, right? Like, we're well sourced to be competing. So I don't think, I mean, obviously he mentioned, like everybody else does, like you're always trying to get more money. But we know for a fact that the sources of income that we have had were not utilized, which is one of the biggest bones of contention over the last 3 years with Coach and everything that was going on. And, that was a big one for me, hearing him talk that way, like, not like, hey, we've really got to step up in order to be able to compete, right? He was very confident that we are in set and in place to compete with the right coach. So that gave me a lot of hope. And one thing I really loved is he went out of his way to finish and say, in the proper time and place, Coach will be celebrated for everything he's done. I'm glad that was said and put on out there, because it needs to be, whether it's next year, 5 years, 10 years. He needs to have a statue around that stadium. He needs to be able to come back and get the biggest standing ovation that we've given anybody that's coming back to that place. Because as he said, and he's right, the reason why we're upset is because he raised the bar. He rose the standard. And that's where the frustration has come from, because it seems that he didn't like his own standard at times that he had raised. The biggest thing that I took away from it all, and I love that he brought this up, because Marshall, you've heard a lot of this. We see a lot of this in the chamber from the older crowd or people that have been here a little bit longer. And they're like, hey man, well, you lose Mike Gundy, who are you going to get? This is what we're stepping stone, yada, yada, yada. He went out of his way to say, this is not 1980s Oklahoma State. We have changed a lot. And you brought it up. We have 123 sold out suites for a team that went 3-9 on a Friday night after getting beat by 66 points. We were sold out. Oklahoma State's changed for the better because of Mike Gundy. And that needs to be applauded, and that needs to be appreciated. But at the same time, we need to not fall below that standard. So I appreciate all of it from that standpoint.
How do you guys think the team, the guys, will respond to Meach as the main voice now?
I like that they put Meach, they gave him the responsibility, just being an OSU alum. It'd be kind of hard to imagine turning the keys over to Grantham, like no real ties to OSU. So I like that. Meacham brings this energy, man. He's a good guy for it. And things will be different, but in a lot of ways, things will be the same, because the positive aspects of Cowboy culture and the discipline, accountability, toughness that you hear about, it comes from the top, from Coach Gundy, but it's instilled in the players through Coach Glass. So the fact that they were able to have Coach Glass retained and stay over operations, I think is a good thing. Some people may disagree with that. Some people are looking at Coach Glass as one of the reasons why we have a higher amount of injuries over the past few years, but I don't see it that way. I view Coach Glass in very high esteem. If you're going to fire your coach mid-season, this is about the most seamless way that you can move forward without it disrupting the program by having him at the helm.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, one of my first thought processes was like, okay, who's going to do this? Because nobody really had head coaching experience, especially as OC or DC. And Chad, brought up, the least amount of disruption, which I think that's true. And Meach does bring a certain amount of energy. He also, they were close, and he's been here for a long time at Oklahoma State. And like to your point, Justin, I think there's a lot of things that'll stay the same, but I do think that there's a lot of things that will change. I know for a fact, and then I also know just by watching, that much of like the stale things that really frustrate people about the offense, especially even since Coach Dunn has been there, is because Coach Gundy has got his thumb on it. So I do think there'll be a freeing up I do think there'll be some different tendencies. I do think there'll be some, you can't really change the playbook at this point, but you can definitely free up what you're willing to go to and what situations, those type of things. And I think bring some juice, man. Like, what do you got to lose? And, this is probably Coach Meach's only chance to ever be a head coach, man. Like, go have fun, go out, hang it out, go let it all hang out, and, make these kids enjoy their experience. And I'm for it. And the head coach thing, or the associate head coach thing with Coach Glass, like, there's strength coaches that already do that. There's strength coaches that are already name only in those type of things. He's been an associate AD for a long time, so he's very well versed in the X's and O's and the dotting the I's and crossing the T's type of stuff that they're going to be asking him to do. And like Justin said, there's no one more well respected by those players in that locker room. He's a constant. He'll keep things on the straight. So I liked that actually.
I sort of go back to whenever the TCU Gary Patterson stuff happened. Jerry Kill, I think, turned into their interim head coach, and he actually got a coaching job out of that. He went to New Mexico State, I think.
That's right.
And he was a tough.
He was at Minnesota before that, right? And he was the head coach at Minnesota, and he had those seizure problems, and then he came. Right. So this
is obviously a tough, situation for Meach to be in. Like, the team hadn't beaten an FBS team in 11 games. So I don't know that, he's going to walk in and turn things around, but there is a path there for, if he wants to get some good, tape out of what a Doug Meacham coach team would look like. Even if it's at a lower level, I think that, this is a solid opportunity for him.
Well, and to your point, he's been a wide receiver coach at many stops. He's been one here at Oklahoma State. He's been a tight end coach at Oklahoma State. Maybe if he has the right opportunity, he doesn't want to leave, and then he could have that associate head coach title, depending on who's the right person. There's so many things that are unknown, right? Quite literally just took the top of the can off of this. So we just have no idea. But I do expect a little bit more of a freeing up. The vibe can only be so good when you lose 11 straight FBS games. You're giving up on average, I think, just under 40 points a game, and your average margin in those games is like 17 or something, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care who you are or what's going on. Like, that's a bad vibe. There's no bigger shakeup than what just happened. So we're about to find out.
I'll run through these numbers very quickly because they're bad, but I went through and looked at the 11 game losing streak. So in this time, in these last 11 FBS games, Oklahoma State has been outscored 454 to 213. They've given up 5,674 yards and gained 3,763 yards. So yeah, it's been a bad time. It's been a not good time.
Which is just crazy to think about, right? When we think about Coach Gundy and everything that he built and what it was, like, to even fathom that that's a possibility at Oklahoma State University under Mike Gundy. Like, I think that's probably the hardest part for me is like, what? Like, we used to be like, he only threw for 350. It's okay, And now it's like 250, not bad, bud. Like, we're moving in the right direction.
It was funny. Like, after every Mason Rudolph crazy performance, we'd get in the press conference afterwards, average. I was like, what?
Yeah, 425 touchdowns.
What does good look like?
Yeah.
See, I love stats, but those are the statistics that make me want to lean more toward Munkin, where he's like, stats are for losers.
Stats are for losers if you're winning.
Those are losing stats.
Yeah, I was gonna say stats are for losers if you're winning with bad stats.
Do you guys, and feel free to say no, but do you guys have any, having played under Gundy, do you guys have any stories you'd like to share, things about just your time with him, the first time like you saw him as a player, anything like that?
I got two. So first time I ever got yelled at by yelling.
I've even got one of those stories.
Well, yelling is strong, but
I've got one too.
So I had just gotten to Oklahoma State. He didn't even know my name, which was fair. I was like, that doesn't bother me any, honestly. The less you know right now, the better, because I'm trying to get, I don't know what's going on. But we had just had practice and whatnot, and I'm dead. Like, I am dead tired. My knee is killing me, which I later had to have surgery on, all these things. I'm just like, he always has you put your, one knee down, one knee up, helmet off, right next to you, eyes on him. Like, that's how you finish every practice. So I go down and he's talking. I'm looking down at my knee. It's just killing me. because I'm like in this 90-degree position, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like
Even as a high school football player, I've been there before where you're on a knee way too long, and I didn't
yes,
have any surgery on my knees.
yeah. And so I'm like, I am hurting so bad. And then I noticed that everybody stopped talking. And I'm like, and my eyes like slowly come up, and he's like, son, I'm going to teach you something about Oklahoma State. And I was like, oh boy. He's like, I know you're new here, so I'm not going to get on to you. But I'm talking eyes up, he gives me the whole spiel, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was a great first impression. Like, sweet, dude. But then the other thing is he couldn't really pronounce my last name. So, which is Gilsleider. Get it? Not the easiest thing in the world. If you look at it, you can figure it out, but it's got a lot of them. So he was like, I don't know if you guys remember like Rookie of the Year, like when you're like trying to come up with a name, like Gardenhoser, you know what I mean? So I had done something pretty well, and he was like, Gunslinger, nice job. And I was like, I'm not going to correct it. I like it. And so like it kind of picked up on the team, but yeah, those are like some little personal ones and things like that. But there's a lot of them, but those are the first two that came to mind for me.
That's good. I thought he'd be calling you 23, right? We're hearing the stories about how he just calls players by their jersey numbers, but yeah, I grew up an OSU fan, and it had always been a dream of mine to play football at Oklahoma State. So whenever I was in high school and that dream was starting to kind of take shape, like this could be a possibility for me, Coach Gundy was already the head coach. And I looked up to him like, I really want to play for this guy. I admire him. The whole I'm a man, I'm 40 had come out and all that stuff. By the time that I got there, made it on the team as a walk-on, same kind of thing, Nate. I was like down in the front in the circle. One, I'm short, so it helps to be up front so I can, see him anyway. But I was always looking forward to taking advantage of like just being in his presence, soaking up the greatness that was there. That's how I approached it every day. At the time that he had first spoken with me was actually I had won Player of the Week on Scout Team based on just an effort play. To be honest, I mean it's more than just the one play, I guess. But the thing that really stood out was this play where I got clipped, blocked in the back, whatever, and then I got up as if it didn't happen, finished strong through the play, made the tackle on the special team still. So I was a special teams, scout team, player of the week, all that stuff. And I had gone up to Coach Gundy after one of the practices. Hey, Coach, I wanted to ask you something. I don't remember exactly how it went, but I had said something about, I'm new here. I know you don't know who I am, and he stopped me there. I know who you are. You do? It's like, yeah. Didn't you just win Scout Team Player of the Week? Oh yeah, I did. Anyway, wanted to talk to you about, I don't even remember what it was. Something about it ended up turning into a recruiting topic of discussion. Like he knew that I was from Westmore, so he's asking me about a guy from Southmore and all this other stuff. So it turned into that. But that was kind of like one of the memories that stands out to me from Coach Gundy. There's no reason for this guy to know who I am, but in that moment he knew who I was. So I thought that was really cool.
He was so structured and so regimented and so many things that like the consistency at that time was kind of what you revered about him. Like you knew his expectations. You knew like if you did this, you were in trouble. If you did this, like this is what was going to happen. Like there was no ifs, ands, or buts. That's where the cowboy culture was built. It was built from him doing things the hard way, and through Coach Glass working. They were in lockstep. They, like if you got in trouble with Coach Gundy, you got in trouble with Coach Glass. They knew, they talked, everything was together. There's only one time I ever remember like one person getting a pass on something, and the only pass they got was as they got to work out with Coach Glass one-on-one later. Like that was your pass. It was like, okay, no stadiums, but you're going at this time. He was very proud. You could tell he's very proud of what Oklahoma State was doing. I don't know if today's the day or not, but there's a time where I think people are going to understand what he was able to accomplish, especially in that middle part where we really started dominating Texas, and we had better teams than OU, even though we didn't win a lot of those games. And this is no exaggeration because I saw a sheet. I was talking to Wes Edwards one time. He showed me a sheet of athletic department budgets in the Big 12. Texas quite literally tripled Oklahoma State. OU more than doubled. You know, I think we were like 7th, 8th out of the Big 12. And so, you know, what he was able to hang his hat on and finding the right guys and grinding it out and getting them to buy in. We, as fans, and you hear so often about like, oh, he always got the quarterback wrong, or, you know, he did this or he did that. Part of the reason why he got the quarterback wrong is because he stayed true to his values regardless. And that was, hey, man, he's put in the time. He's been here for 3 years. He's going to get the first shake. We have to make them believe that if they're here, they work hard, you do the right things, you're going to get an opportunity to play. And more often than not, I'd say about 99% of the time, that was the case. You know, those are the type of things that I'll remember most about Coach. You know, there's speeches or there's things like that, you know, certain games and whatever else. But those are the things that I admire and had admired so much about him and what he was able to accomplish. And that's why it makes like this a bittersweet moment. We all always wanted it to go a certain way. I think we probably all knew in our hearts that it wasn't going to go the way that we wanted it to. So it's just a somber thing, man. And I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to be a part of something bigger than myself, coming from where I came from, and the injuries and the dreams that died, and all of those things. Like, I was just searching for something, to be a part of something, and he gave that to me, and I'm still so proud of that. I'm so proud of the things I overcame and the things that he and Coach Glass and my other coaches taught me. And I'll never forget that. You know, as a fan, you know, I've been pretty loose with like, hey, you know, we kind of know what's coming, changes need to be made. But when the reality hits, it's different and it sucks. And yes, the change need to be made. Absolutely. Doesn't make it suck any less that it happened this way and under these terms. And I mean, goodness, boys, the stats you just reeled off and the streak that we're on right now, like, that is bottoming out to an extreme that very few coaches have ever done. But very few coaches have ever had to go through what he's gone through in the last 4 years of basically everything you did to build this program no longer works. You need to change.
Yeah.
Like,
something you mentioned there about, you know, how he was always pro the guy that's been there getting the first shot at it. That in itself is, I think, a respectable quality to have, but particularly in the NIL era, that's not what's going to fly. So I think that sort of is the duality of
100%. Yeah. Well, I mean, let's just bring up, you know, the 4 quarterback rotation or the 3 quarterback rotation or whatever, right? That in itself is, to your point, Marshall, like, that can't happen. That should have never happened. But his inability to adapt in a way of saying like, hey, we paid Alan Bowman money to come in here. He needs to be QB1. That's just it. Now, whether you agree with that or not, then why'd you bring him in here? So you're right. I think we can go back and point to that in many ways. I mean, we know that like he left quite a bit of money on the table the first year of NIL because he didn't believe it and he didn't want to do it. Bringing back the entire roster, was that probably the right move? Probably not. Right? I mean, those type of things, right? Because he's just like, well, this is what I know. This is what we're here. They've earned that opportunity. He even said as much. I'm going to ask them if they want to come back. If they say yes, I'll allow them to do that. That's not, I admire that. And as a player, I would love that. But as a GM, that's probably not the best way. Because if you're doing a good job of self-scouting, you realize that team had a lot of holes that they masked up by a really weak schedule and a scheme change. You know what I mean? So to your point, Marshall, I think you're 100% right. And I think that's part of the predicament of where he's at. You know, does he actually want to change? Just changing location is not going to change his fortune. I mean, we've seen that with Bill Belichick. We've seen that, you know, with we see what's happening with Dabo Swinney at Clemson, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, Utah. I mean, Kyle Whittingham still hasn't won a home game in Big 12 play yet. You know what I'm saying? So like these coaches that were so unbelievably successful at what they did, I don't blame them for this, but it just doesn't work right now under this format.
Good stuff, Nate. Good stuff. Great stuff, actually. Well, the Reload podcast is brought to you by Brewster Consulting Group. Do any of these sound familiar at your company? Our processes are manual and inefficient with no documentation. Our data reporting takes forever and isn't accurate. We hear all the hype about AI, but have no clue what it actually means for our business. Our projects always run over time and over budget. If so, talk with our friends at Brewster Consulting Group. They help build organizations that run like well-oiled machines with clear processes, reliable data and reporting, and technology that actually works for you. Their team of Six Sigma Black Belts, PMP certified project managers, and seasoned data engineers have delivered solutions that are built to last for local clients like the Tulsa International Airport and Medify. They've also delivered solutions for large international enterprises like DP World. Even better, Brewster was founded and is run by a proud OSU alum and season ticket holder. Learn more about them at www.brewsterconsulting.com or learn more about their methodologies by connecting with them at Brewster Consulting Group on LinkedIn or YouTube. All right, so I know that the next question that everybody wants to hear is, who do we want to see as OSU's next head coach?
Well, I do want to get there, but I forgot I wanted to say one more thing. We can get there.
Absolutely, yeah.
This right now, what we're getting ready to go through as a fan base, as alums, former players, or whatever, this is loyal and true. Coach Gundy does not make loyal and true. A coach does not make loyal and true. This is what that means, right? And he said it, and he'll say it again. I'd imagine he said it to the team today. Oklahoma State's going to be here. It was here before you. It'll be here long after you. Now you're a part of it. And so I think as a fan base, and, I'm speaking to myself as well, like, if you can make it, show up for these guys. Because right now they're literally playing without a head coach. This is where the adversity and the things that we've gone through as a fan base and as a school, when we always show up for one another, this is what that means. And so I've seen that thrown around a lot, and it's really been irritating me sometimes the way that Coach Gundy's thrown it around, and the used to try to get more NIL and complaining and things like that, and kind of shielding himself like, well, loyal and true, that's what I should say. No, this is loyal and true.
Yeah.
You thank the man and you show up for the kids.
I do want to echo that sentiment, because people just say loyal and true. You got to take it in the context, right? Ever you'll find us loyal and true to our alma mater, OSU, not to Gundy. And I know there's sentiment out there that Gundy is Oklahoma State football. No question, he's done an enormous amount for Oklahoma State. But to your point, Nate, coach has said it himself. It's bigger than one guy. And it should be that way. How terrible of a leader would he be if he didn't develop the program in such a way that it cannot be successful or sustainable without him? So now is the time to start embracing a worldview where OSU can and will succeed in a post-Gundy era.
Sorry to break that up, but I meant to say that earlier when we first got on and we got sidetracked, but that's been bothering me and I wanted to get that off my chest.
It's good. But now you have to dive right into who you think is going to be I'm just kidding. I know, Marshall, you've probably got some stuff on Pistols Firing already about maybe some top names that we're looking at.
Yeah, we put a hot board out today. I think it's of 6 names. Guys we mentioned, obviously Zach Robinson. That still, if you're putting Vegas odds on it, which I'm sure Vegas has already put odds on it, I imagine that Zach Robinson is the favorite. Going back to last December in the Board of Regents meeting, yada yada yada. Ian Rappaport tweets out that he's an NFL. He covers the NFL. He tweets out that had this gone the other way, that Zach Robinson would be like the top of Oklahoma State's list. It still feels like that would hold true right now. Another guy that I've been hearing a lot, just and not from OSU people or anything like that, just like general people and K-State people in particular seem to be really worried about this. Colin Klein, obviously K-State quarterback, worked his way up to K-State OC, left K-State I think 2 years ago. Is now the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M. The Aggies this season ranked 20th nationally with 480.3 yards per game, and they've scored 42.3 yards per game, and that includes a game against Notre Dame. So it's not like they've just been through the early portions of their season. Another name, Alex Golish, was a GA at Oklahoma State, is now the coach at USF, beat Boise State, a ranked Boise State team pretty good to start the year, obviously beats Florida, hung around-ish with Miami, but I think that job was like USF in the 3 years before Alex Golish got there was 4-29. And now they're, beating Florida in the swamp. So I think that's certainly something. Jim Knowles, I think Jim Knowles is an interesting name because he's like one of the one names that's getting thrown around that's like an older guy. I don't know if Jim Knowles would want to, I imagine he's getting paid very well at Penn State. It's the state of which he's from, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what Jim Knowles would even think about that job, what Oklahoma State would think about a guy of Jim Knowles' age about that job. Because, and not that Jim Knowles wouldn't use the portal and stuff like that, but you just come from an older guy. Gundy's not crazy old in coaching standards, but an older guy who didn't use the portal. I don't know if you just want to jump right back in, but obviously his defenses are incredible. GJ Kenny, he was a guy that picked up a lot of steam. I think even last year, Texas State was 10-26 in the 3 years prior to his rival. I think he's 19-11 there. I think they've made bowl games maybe the last 2 years. So that's something. Jeff Traylor, UTSA, he's had UTSA rolling, I feel like, for a pretty decent time. Obviously, that's, for a group of 5 program, that's probably a pretty prime spot to be able to recruit to in San Antonio. But still, I think it'd be interesting to see sort of what he could do at a Power 5. I've also heard, some Ben Arbuckle. I don't know how that happens, what that looks like, so I don't know if Oklahoma State would be interested in that. I don't know if Ben Arbuckle would be interested in that. But those are the. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say his brother was the backup long snapper at OSU when I was there. So
all right, never mind. I'm all the way back in.
There is a small tie there, but yeah, I think whenever I look at it, there's a few names you brought up that I think are the givens, right? Obviously Zach Z-Rob, I get it, and I'm a big fan, so I'm really biased because I know him individually. He's not like a super energetic, outspoken guy in the locker room. He is that guy. So, and
because of Z-Rob, on every NCAA football game, my quarterback was wearing one long sleeve 100% of the time. I'm going in and editing that instantly.
Yeah, he had swag. There's no doubt about it. He coached under Sean McVay. The only issue, and I think it's a bigger issue than a lot of people are just kind of poo-pooing, especially when you're talking about now having to get commitments back, you only have one portal window instead of 2. The NFL thing is a big problem, in my opinion. It's bigger than I think we want to give it credence. Because if we're going to go old, I go old and I go Todd Monken. Because if I'm going old, I'm going Todd Monken. But again, he's trying to win until February. So, that doesn't really work. Same thing with Zach. And, they make the playoffs, they do all these things. I get it. The GM is the one that's actually doing it. He could, FaceTime, call, do whatever. But that's still going to put you behind. That's just the way it is. There's just no way, 2 ways around that. I like the GJ Kenny aspect. Because I think at its core, we know what Oklahoma State needs to be. It's kind of like when Luke Fickell went to Wisconsin, and he brought North Carolina's OC with him, and hey, we're going to kind of spread it around and get a quarterback. And it's it's not Wisconsin. You need 2 running backs back there. You need an offensive line that averages about 345. That's how Wisconsin plays ball, right?
Yep.
We know Oklahoma State. You need to score points. You need to up tempo.
The offensive identity, baby.
Right? You do. I mean, that's just who we've been. We've been that way since the 80s. That's Oklahoma State. And so you look at a guy like Eric Morris from North Texas, somebody that intrigues me. Will Stein, the guy, the OC from Oregon, who was with Traylor at UTSA. Now, that's a guy at that level. I would imagine. I don't think. He is from Texas, but I don't think that Oklahoma State, I think, there's going to be Arkansas, Florida, probably Wisconsin, versus Virginia Tech. There's going to be a lot of pretty big names. So, I don't know if we'd be able to scoop him early, before all this happens.
Marcus Arroyo.
I was going to say Marcus Arroyo is somebody I came to my mind, the running back coach at Oklahoma State, was Chuba's running back coach. He is a West Coast guy though. And, he was a head coach at UNLV, and that didn't really work out too well.
That's fair.
Was it Saturday night that Arizona State was playing?
Yes.
They cut to Arroyo in the, as he's calling plays, and Wozniak is sitting right next to him. And I was just what a weird time we live in.
Very, very weird. So you brought up a lot of good names. Now, you brought up one name that whenever I first saw it, I wasn't thrilled. The more I've thought about it, I've become very intrigued by Colin Klein. From Texas, I believe he's from Texas, if I'm not mistaken. He understands what it takes to win at a place like Oklahoma State because he won at Kansas State, and his coach was Bill Snyder. He gets it. He's won various ways. He's a great OC, has been for a while now. I don't know, you start looking at things like that, and I'm like, he checks a lot of boxes of understanding what it would take to win at a place like Oklahoma State. And it scares Kansas State, which I enjoy.
Yeah, that's fun. Colin Klein, actually from Loveland, Colorado.
Colorado,
So-
that's right.
So
Yep.
the top two
Yep.
names on at least the list we put out: Littleton,
Yep.
Colorado, Loveland, Colorado.
That's right. So I was wrong there. But yeah, I just think the Kansas State connection of understanding, the ag school, what it takes, how you get the fan base going, what you need to see, the type of stuff you have to do to win. Which I was like, the more I thought about it, it kind of intrigued me.
And I know that payment probably has a lot to do with this, but the fact that he was willing to leave K-State and go to A&M, I think says, I think that says that he's like in this to actually climb the coaching ladder as quick as he can. So I think that's an interesting aspect to that.
Memphis's head coach, is it Silverstein?
Ryan Silverstein.
For what it's worth, and I don't know anything about this guy, but Memphis, in terms of Group of 5 teams, is playing with a lot more money. They tried to pay the Big 12 like $200 million just to get in.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
they've won like 4 in a row against SEC opponents or something like that. Like they're playing ball.
He's 46-21 overall.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Not bad.
But I'm very confident after hearing Weiberg speak. This is not just going to be a like, hey, let's shoot for a younger guy and see if we hit. Like it'll be best guy. We're going to be going for it.
Yeah, look no further than the fact that David Taylor is the wrestling coach right now. It'd have been so easy for him to hire literally anybody else. And he wouldn't got
100%. That's a great point.
I mean, Coleman Scott was essentially lined up to be the guy, right?
Yeah, Coleman Scott literally
and it would have
stopped
been a
being
good
the head
choice.
coach.
Like he's a good coach.
Yeah.
He was the head coach at North Carolina, came to Oklahoma State to see John Smith off essentially, and then David Taylor's the coach now. So it was a tough situation for him, but that just sort of says the mindset that Weiberg's going into this stuff with.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I think we're going to hear a whole lot more about this stuff coming right in the coming weeks and how things go. But yeah, I don't know. Those are just the first couple that popped into mind. Everything you said, and I just feel like you have to go with the offensive identity, and you have to get back to scoring points in Stillwater, Oklahoma. There's Gundy at his peak when Stillwater at its peak. Man, it's like 35. Yeah, that's a slow day. Like let's go put up 42. You know what I mean? Like. We haven't put up 42 combined this season, so that's just I think that's just where you got to be. It's kind of like OSU basketball. It's like Eddie Sutton defense, man. You got to play defense. That's just the way Oklahoma State wins ball games, and you got to do it. And until we get back to that, I think we're going to continue to struggle.
But I also like Steve Lutz's mentality of fast break, scoring quick.
1,000%, and I think he's going to do great. But my point being is that we've tried other ways at Oklahoma State that just haven't worked for various reasons. I'm just kind of using that as an identity.
All right. I think we're running out of time to be able to talk Baylor, but I don't necessarily think that the listeners came here to hear about the Baylor preview, so we're probably okay there. What we can do is dive right into some questions from the chamber because we're going to answer our listeners' questions, of course. Crazed Stallion, do they try and hire immediately?
I don't think in talking to Chad today, it didn't seem like that was going to be the process. Seems like Oklahoma State sort of wants to have any questions that candidates would have answered by the time that this time comes around. But Chad said it today. Pretty much everybody they're going after has a job already. He did say that they want to keep it. What was the word he used? I don't know, professional essentially, in that he doesn't want it to get out. And that has historically happened with, I think back to the hiring of Steve Lutz. That didn't really come out until like the day that it was ready to roll. David Taylor, like people started tracking flights and they're like, surely this isn't for real, right? And then finally it came out as it was David Taylor. So I do expect this to be kept relatively under wraps. I wonder how possible that is in a sport like football where, you're going to have national people poking around at any corner. So, but yeah, I don't think that we're going to get an announcement anytime soon. I think it'll be definitely like November-ish at the earliest.
Yeah, I might even think later than that, honestly, because if you're getting a guy that's coaching well and into that, if he's in a playoff scenario or something like that, like I think it's gonna be a while, guys, and that's okay.
A question here from OSU Dan. I'm interested to hear if you know how it went down today. Did the players find out before? Was there a major confrontation that happened? Obviously, something serious must have happened from his press conference to last night to this morning. I think we kind of touched on some of that stuff, except for maybe if there was a major confrontation that happened. And I think that based on Weiberg's press conference, it sounded like Gundy took it in stride, professional, no major confrontation. Marshall, do you know any other insight from your perspective on that?
No, based on I think Kenyatta put out a tweet today of him talking with the players. I think that happened after practice. He was in Gundy was essentially in like normal people clothes, not really in coaching clothes. So he has talked with him. Weiberg said he was there whenever. I can't remember if Weiberg said he specifically told him, or if he was just in the Weiberg specifically told him, or if Weiberg was just in the room whenever the players found out. He said, it was generally quiet, not a ton of people obviously talking. It's obviously a really serious matter. So we've talked about how the Tuesday thing was weird, but I don't think there was anything, and maybe we'll find out, a week from now that stuff was going crazy, but that's not the feeling that I got from just being around Oklahoma State today.
Also added here, over under 5 players to hit the portal by Saturday. And who do you kind of anticipate who we might see would leave?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because while they haven't played 4 games, and that's like a sort of another interesting thing about the timing of this is that these guys could redshirt and portal.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something that Nathan's brought up previously, like what tape are they going to have that they're going to the portal with? So anytime that, a coach leaves, no matter the timing, players are going to leave. That's just how this is going to go. Commits are going to decommit, but you sort of can't hold the program back in hopes that a high school player stays along.
Yeah. Also, 2 points here. Number one, we've lost 11 in a row. So who's leaving, what caliber of player? Let's take this all in stride. Secondly, it's never been easier to fall, but it's also never been easier to get back up off the mat. While it's frustrating and you want to hit the panic button, and now we've lost all these commits and you got these guys leaving and so forth and so on. It also takes a lot less time if you do it right in the portal to get things back on track. So there's going to be a rebuilding process no matter what, but it could be faster than what you would normally think. It used to be like, hey, 3 years, you got to get your first class to be juniors so you can really start seeing things change. You know what I mean? Like that's just not the case anymore. And quite frankly, coaches don't have the timeline to be able to do that. So that's just, I don't know. I feel like that's just kind of old school thinking.
Yeah. John Laxative had a similar question in there. We didn't cover it, but wanted to give you a shout out, John. I think we got your question answered with that as well. So Insurance Poke, what is the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for the new head football coach?
I think the best case scenario is just whoever it is that is going to take Oklahoma State into the modern era of college football, whoever that may be. I think maybe worst case scenario. Like I'd heard the name Dabo Swinney recently, and it's like, so you want to get stuck in the exact same problems that Oklahoma State was just in?
Yeah, you're just looking at college football memes.
He's just a younger Mike Gundy.
Yeah. What could be interesting though, and I'm totally not Team Dabo. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Like if he recruited high schools as hard as he could at Oklahoma State and tried to, I think that's maybe a more sustainable model in trying to win the Big 12 as opposed to in trying to win a national championship. I guess.
Yeah, but he's not even winning the ACC.
Yeah, and by no means am I. Like I said, I'm not Team Dabo to Oklahoma State.
Thank you, Marshall. I'm glad you cleared that up.
Brian at the RR. Do we see an improvement in the X's and O's since all coaches are coaching for their next gig? And a similar question from Ryan S. How different do you think the schemes will be, particularly offensively, with Gundy's influence removed?
Well, this was their coach's job regardless of who was the head coach. So I don't think you're going to see like, oh, now you were under contract regardless. So you were coaching for your job every year. That's how coaches approach it always. So I don't think you're going to see like a different effort level from the coaches, or they're going to be here longer in film or do those type of things. I do expect some difference, especially on the offensive side in play calling. I talked about this earlier. Maybe some freedom, some ability maybe to do some different things, definitely some different tendencies. Lord, please let us be done with the 3rd and 13 draw plays. QB draw plays, I should say.
Do you also want to see more 4th down attempts? Because why not?
Absolutely. Exactly. Those are the type of things, right, Justin? I think you're going to see that type of stuff. I think you're going to see some Coach Gundy believes in that, and this is the way the game of football was played for 30 years, but it's changed. But it was always, you got to run, you got to establish the run first to be able to pass. The game's changed. You have to be able to threaten people deep to keep the safeties high, and then you can run the ball inside, unless you have Derrick Henry. That's one of the main ways the game has changed over the last 5 to 7 years. We have not adapted. We run on first down, and then it's 2nd and 7, and then it goes 3rd and 7, and then you're like, okay, now we're 3rd and deep, and now we got to pray that we hit a deep ball. That's just not the way the game's played anymore.
Or you don't pray that you run a deep ball and you run a draw.
Yes, exactly. You run the QB draw for somebody that's not very fast, and the fans love it. But no, I do expect some differences. I don't know about for Baylor, but honestly, this is one of those situations where, as a coach and as a interim, like, this is where you throw in some of those gadgets, some of those trick plays that you probably normally wouldn't, because you need some excitement. You need to engage some of the dudes. You need to do something that's gonna liven things up, man. Like, we're on the mat. As a program and as a team, we are on the mat. I would still fully anticipate Haas Haney coming back when ready, but who knows, man? So, you can't wait till he comes back to change things. You've got to try to do things now. So I do expect some differences. Absolutely.
Very nice. Well, anything else, guys, that we want to cover before we wrap things up here tonight?
Been a long day. Mike Gundy, greatest coach in Oklahoma State's history. Name the field after him. Give him a statue. You could argue about whether today specifically was the right time, but generally it was time for a change. So, I think I just keep saying two things can be true. Mike Gundy was the greatest football coach that Oklahoma State has ever had, and probably will ever have. I don't know that anybody's sniffing 170 anytime soon.
That's kind of where I'm at, right? I think now that the plug's been pulled on the drain that we already saw swirling, I think now is the time that we can understand what he did for our program and our university. Because, let's be real. When Oklahoma State's good at football, we set freshman class attendance records at Oklahoma State, right? I mean, those two are synonymous. They go hand in hand. He helped the town of Stillwater. He did a ton of incredible things.
He's probably the reason we're talking on this podcast right now.
No, 100. Well, I mean, remember Kyle Porter wrote that great article that you guys posted, right? And that's 100% true. He has done so much for our program and for the university. I hope there's a time soon. Like I said, I do think there will be, because by all accounts, yes, I'm sure he's pissed off and he's irritated, but there's not the animosity that I think some thought that there might be. And so I do think it's sooner than later that we have a true appreciation of I believe it was 6 New Year's 6 bowl games, beating Stanford to win the Fiesta Bowl, beating Notre Dame, won 7 out of 8 at one point against Texas. He's won 2 out of the last 3 Bedlams, first round draft picks, All-Americans. There's so many things that he's done that, quite frankly, were not even plausible before he's got here and before he did what he did. He did, yank our chain around a few times, trying to, maybe go to other jobs. But guess what? He stayed. He continued to win, and he continued to earn his paycheck, even though it was exorbitant at the time. He did all of that, and he made Oklahoma State nationally relevant. A lot of times by saying things that other people wouldn't say. And I'm sure, Marshall, your job over the last several years, I know the last 2 have been tough, but hey, man, like, it's a luxury to cover a football coach like Mike Gundy that's going to say something once a week that allows you to get some notoriety nationally for. I hope we have a broad view and don't let these last 14, 16 months dictate what he truly means to us as fans, as former players, and, as alum, because he is a titan of Oklahoma State football. The reason why we're upset is because he raised that standard. I truly believe that as a university, we can continue to grow, and we're going to be in the right spot. And I do think if we get the right coach, he can do some incredible things here. And that's because Mike Gundy, and I'm thankful.
We're going to talk about Gundy, I'm sure, a lot more in the future. But for right now, it would be a great time for you to join the chamber by subscribing to PFB Plus. We'll have a link for you in the description. If you would, please like, share, comment, subscribe, rate, and review, just to show your support for this show. Keep those pistols firing, and now more than ever, it is time to reload. Go Pokes.